I'm with a family right now.
The family can wait. You need to come with us.
A federal agent approaches Dr. Gerald Okafor in a fluorescent-lit school hallway, bodycam rolling, as he stands frozen in his suit and lanyard, his hands clasped in front of him. His name was Dr. Gerald Okafor, 51 years old, principal of Denton Ridge High School in Gwinnett County, Georgia, named Georgia Secondary Educator of the Year in 2019, photographed shaking the governor's hand, quoted in 3 separate Atlanta Journal-Constitution profiles about closing the achievement gap. He wore the lanyard around his neck every single day. He believed in what it represented. And for 6 years, while he was giving graduation speeches about integrity and futures and the power of education to transform a life, he had been running a scheme that exploited the families of the very students he was supposed to be protecting. In approximately 45 seconds, a federal agent would lead him out of Denton Ridge High School, through the side exit near the gymnasium, past the trophy case he had curated himself, past the bulletin board where college acceptance letters from the class of 2024 were pinned in neat rows, past the portrait of him hanging in the main hallway that the PTA had commissioned in 2020. He would not come back. What investigators had spent 8 months unraveling was a fraud scheme built on the one thing every parent of a college-bound teenager is most afraid of: that their child won't be able to pay for school. 214 families, $3.1 million in fraudulent student loan origination fees, a network of 3 private lenders, a loan broker, and a school administrator who used his position, his degrees, his reputation, and his lanyard to steer desperate families toward financial products designed to drain them. And the only reason any of it was discovered is because someone inside that school made one anonymous phone call on a Thursday afternoon. Before we continue, have you ever signed a financial document because someone in a position of authority told you it was the right thing to do? Have you ever trusted an educator with something bigger than a grade? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe to this channel right now. We cover cases exactly like this one every week. Origin story. Gerald Okafor was born on February 22nd, 1972, in Decatur, Georgia. His parents had emigrated from Lagos, Nigeria in 1968. His father, Emmanuel, held a civil engineering degree from the University of Lagos that the state of Georgia did not recognize. And so he drove a taxi 6 days a week for 11 years while requalifying through Georgia Tech's extension program. His mother, Ngozi, worked as a home health aide in DeKalb County, $7.40 an hour, caring for elderly patients in houses larger than anything the Okafor family had ever lived in. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur until Gerald was 9, then bought a small house on Glendale Avenue with a down payment that Emmanuel had saved across 4 years of 6-day weeks. Gerald shared a room with his younger brother, Emeka, until he graduated high school. The room had a desk built from a hollow core door and 2 sawhorses that Emmanuel had assembled himself on a Sunday afternoon. He told Gerald, "This desk is for one thing. You sit at it and you become something." Gerald sat at it. His grades were exceptional from the beginning. Straight A's through middle school, AP courses from sophomore year, a perfect attendance record across 4 years at Decatur High School. His teachers did not describe him with words like steady or quiet, the way they had described Terrence Holloway or the others before him. They described Gerald Okafor with a kind of enthusiasm that bordered on relief. He was the student teachers talked about in the faculty lounge, the one who stayed after class to argue about ideas rather than grades, the one who organized the Model UN chapter when there wasn't one, and ran it so effectively that the school qualified for nationals in his junior year. He graduated valedictorian in 1990. His valedictory speech, which his mother kept in a laminated sleeve in the drawer of her nightstand until she died in 2018, included a line that would later be quoted at his sentencing hearing with a very different inflection. "The most dangerous thing a person can do with an education is use it only for themselves." He attended Morehouse College on a full academic scholarship, graduated in 1994 with a degree in education and a minor in economics, earned his master's in educational leadership from Georgia State in 1997, earned his doctorate in curriculum and instruction from the University of Georgia in 2003, writing his dissertation on equitable resource distribution in Title I schools. Dr. Gerald Okafor. He had been the first in his family to finish a 4-year degree. He was now the first to hold a doctorate. When his father saw the diploma, Emmanuel Okafor, a man who had driven a taxi 6 days a week for 11 years so his son could sit at a hollow core door desk and become something, stood in the kitchen of the Glendale Avenue house and cried without trying to stop himself. Gerald spent the first decade of his career inside classrooms, English teacher at Southwest DeKalb High School for 4 years, assistant principal at Norcross High School for 3, principal at a middle school in Lawrenceville, where he turned around a school that had been on the state's failing list for 5 consecutive years. His methods were not complicated. He hired teachers who believed children were capable. He removed the ones who had stopped believing. He called parents back himself when other administrators had stopped trying. He stayed in the building until the janitor asked him to leave. In 2011, he was appointed principal of Denton Ridge High School in Gwinnett County. 800 student enrollment, Title I designation, a community where more than 60% of students qualified for free or reduced lunch, where first-generation college attendance was the aspiration and the obstacle simultaneously, where parents who had never attended college themselves were trying to navigate a financial aid system specifically designed to be confusing. Gerald Okafor understood those parents. He had been raised by them. For 7 years, he was exactly what Denton Ridge needed. Graduation rates climbed from 71% to 89% under his leadership. College enrollment among graduating seniors went from 44% to 67%. He hired a full-time college counselor when the district only budgeted for half a position, funding the difference through grants he wrote himself on evenings and weekends. He created a parent financial literacy program that ran every spring, walking families through FAFSA applications, scholarship searches, and loan comparison tools. He sat across tables from parents who were scared and confused and made them feel like they could figure it out. They trusted him completely. In 2018, something changed. STEM vulnerability. To understand how Gerald Okafor exploited the families of Denton Ridge High School for 6 years without anyone stopping him, you have to understand the specific vulnerability he found at the intersection of 3 systems: the American college financial aid process, the private student loan market, and the institutional authority of a high school principal. The federal financial aid process, FAFSA, Pell Grants, subsidized federal loans, is standardized, regulated, and relatively transparent. Anyone can file it. Anyone can compare offers. Interest rates are capped. Repayment options are clear. The private student loan market is none of those things. Private student loans are issued by banks, credit unions, and independent lending companies. Interest rates range from competitive to predatory, depending on the lender and the borrower's creditworthiness. Origination fees, a percentage of the total loan amount charged at closing, can range from 0 to 8% or higher. Repayment terms vary enormously, and unlike federal loans, private loans carry no income-based repayment backstop. If a family signs for a private loan and the student can't pay it back, the family pays it back, period. For first-generation college families without financial advisors, without lawyers, without anyone to read the fine print, private student loans are a trap that looks like a door, and the person most trusted to tell them which doors to walk through was their child's principal. In Georgia, school employees are prohibited under the Georgia Ethics in Government Act from using their official position to obtain personal financial benefits. They are prohibited from accepting compensation from any entity for services related to their official duties. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission maintains a code of conduct for educators that explicitly addresses conflicts of interest. The prohibitions are clear. Enforcement depends on someone knowing a violation is occurring. At Denton Ridge High School, Gerald Okafor had restructured the college counseling process after his arrival in 2011 in a way that his staff and his community experienced as improvement and innovation. He created what he called a College Readiness Partnership Program, a formal process through which the school worked with a curated list of approved educational support vendors, SAT prep companies, scholarship search platforms, and, eventually, lending partners. The lending partners were described to parents
as vetted financial institutions that the school had evaluated for competitive rates and family-friendly terms. They were presented in informational packets distributed at the spring financial literacy nights that Gerald had created. They appeared on a laminated resource sheet that was sent home with every junior in the spring semester. The resource sheet carried the Denton Ridge High School letterhead. It carried Gerald Okafor's signature. No parent questioned a lender that the principal had personally endorsed. No parent knew that Gerald Okafor was being paid to endorse them. The crime mechanics. The arrangement began in the spring of 2018. A man named Terrence Fluin ran a loan brokerage operation called Pinnacle Education Partners LLC, incorporated in Fulton County in 2016. Pinnacle was not a lender. It was a referral intermediary. Pinnacle connected borrowing families with 3 private lending companies, one based in Atlanta, one in Charlotte, one incorporated in Delaware, and collected origination fee commissions from each lender for every loan it originated. Standard practice in the brokerage industry, legal when disclosed. Fluellen had spent 2 years building relationships with college counselors and high school administrators across the metro Atlanta area, offering what he described as partnership agreements. The arrangement was straightforward. In exchange for directing families toward Pinnacle's lending partners, school personnel received a referral fee. Fluell had approached guidance counselors, vice principals, and 3 other building-level principals before he walked into a meeting with Gerald Okafor in February 2018. Gerald listened to the pitch for 22 minutes. He asked 4 questions. He said he needed to think about it. He called Fluen back 9 days later. The agreement was never written down. It did not need to be. Fluell understood the architecture intuitively. Gerald would include Pinnacle's lending partners in the school's college readiness partnership resource materials, mention them by name at financial literacy events, and direct families who came to him personally for loan guidance toward Pinnacle's intake process. In return, Fluellen would pay Gerald a flat fee for every loan that closed, $800 per loan for amounts under $20,000. $1,400 per loan for amounts between $20,000 and $40,000, and $2,000 for any loan exceeding $40,000. Cash or money order delivered to a P.O. box in Lawrenceville that Gerald had opened under a variation of his middle name. He never deposited more than $4,000 in any single month. He spread it across 2 personal accounts and a joint account with his wife, Candace, that he balanced himself and she never reviewed. He paid cash for things that were easy to pay cash for. He did not buy lake houses or Cadillac Escalades. He paid down debt. He maxed out his daughter's $529 college savings plan. He put new windows in the house. He bought his mother a plane ticket to Lagos to visit family she hadn't seen in 21 years. His lifestyle did not change visibly. His salary as a principal was $112,000. His wife was a pediatric occupational therapist, earning $78,000. They lived comfortably in Suwannee. They drove sensible cars. They were not flaunting anything. That was the discipline that kept it running for 6 years. The referrals were never explicit during the public events. Gerald was careful. At the spring financial literacy nights, he would walk through the FAFSA process first, explain federal loan options, and then, almost as an aside, almost as a favor, mention that the school had identified some private lenders that families might want to explore if federal funding didn't cover the gap. He would hold up the laminated resource sheet. He would say, "These are institutions we've vetted. I've reviewed their terms personally. If you're a Denton Ridge family, they know you." That last sentence was the key. If you're a Denton Ridge family, they know you. It suggested a relationship, a preferential arrangement, a door that was open specifically because of who Gerald was and what he had built. Parents leaned forward when he said it. They wrote down the names. Where it became especially calculated was in the private appointments. Each spring, Gerald held one-on-one sessions for families who wanted personal guidance on college financing. These sessions were listed on the school calendar as college planning conferences. They were voluntary. They were free. They were by every visible measure, a service that a dedicated principal provided because he cared. In those sessions, Gerald reviewed each family's FAFSA output, discussed their financial situation, and made specific loan recommendations for families who appeared financially stretched, for families with limited credit history, or no one to help them compare options. He recommended Pinnacle's lending partners directly and by name. He would sometimes pull up the lender's website on his laptop and walk the parent through the application process in real time. Several parents later told investigators that Dr. Okafor had personally helped them apply for the loan during the meeting, that he had sat beside them, guided their cursor, and helped them submit the application before they left his office. Before they left his office, they had signed for loans with origination fees between 3.5 and 6%, interest rates between 9 and 14%, and no income-based repayment option. Gerald Okafor earned a referral fee for every one of them. The numbers across 6 years: 2018, 17 loans, $94,000 in referral fees; 2019, 29 loans, $148,000 in referral fees; 2020, 31 loans, $163,000 in referral fees; 2001, 38 loans, $197,000 in referral fees; 22,251 loans, $241,000 in referral fees; 2023, 48 loans, $229,000 in referral fees; total 214 loans, $1.1 million paid to Gerald Okafor, $3.1 million in loan principal extended to families, a significant portion of which carried terms that financial analysts hired by the prosecution would later describe as among the least favorable available in the private student loan market at the time of origination. He had one close call in year 4. In March 2001, a father named Robert Aguilar came to the college planning conference with his daughter Marisol, who had been accepted to Georgia Southern. Robert was a construction foreman. He had done some research beforehand, unusual among the parents Gerald typically saw. He had printed out a comparison of private student loan rates and had circled Pinnacle Education Partners' terms in red. He sat down across from Gerald and slid the printout across the desk. "These are not competitive rates," he said. "I found better from 3 other lenders with less than an hour of searching." Gerald looked at the printout. He did not look at Robert Aguilar for a moment. Then he looked up and said calmly, "You're right that there are other options out there. The reason we recommend these partners is because of the service relationship. They know how to work with Denton Ridge families specifically. First-generation college students sometimes run into issues during the loan process that these lenders are equipped to handle quickly because of our relationship with them." Robert Aguilar looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "What kind of issue?" Gerald said, "Documentation delays, enrollment verification, things that can slow down disbursement at the worst time. These partners have a direct line to our registrar. It speeds things up." None of that was true. There was no direct line to the registrar. There was no special service relationship. Gerald had invented it in approximately 4 seconds. Robert Aguilar took Marisol to Georgia Southern on a federal loan and a merit scholarship. He did not report the conversation. He did not know there was anything to report. You just felt, walking out of the principal's office, that something had been slightly off. He mentioned it to his sister that evening. She told him he was probably reading too much into it. He let it go. 48 more families signed that year. The POOATAON call on October 9th, 2023 at 4:17 in the afternoon. A call was placed to the Georgia Professional Standards Commission Ethics Hotline from a prepaid phone purchased at a Walgreens on Lawrenceville Highway. The caller was on the line for 6 minutes and 14 seconds. The caller did not give a name. They said only that they worked at Denton Ridge High School and that they had information about the principal's involvement with a student loan company called Pinnacle Education Partners. They said they had seen a payment. They said they could not say more than that. The ethics hotline operator asked if the caller would be willing to be contacted for follow-up. The caller said no. The caller ended the call. The tip was logged, assigned a case number, and forwarded to the Professional Standards Commission's investigative unit. It landed on the desk of an investigator named Sylvia Tran, on October 12. She had been with the commission for 9 years. She ran the name Pinnacle Education Partners through the Georgia Secretary of State's Business Registry the same afternoon she received it. Pinnacle Education Partners, LLC. Registered 2016. Registered agent Terrence Darius Fluin. Active status. She ran Terrence Fluin. He had 2 prior civil complaints filed against him with the Georgia Department of Banking and Finance in 2014 and 2015, both alleging undisclosed referral fee arrangements with mortgage brokers. Both complaints had been resolved through consent orders. No criminal charges. Sylvia Tran called the Georgia Department of Banking and Finance the next morning. Then she called the FBI's Atlanta field office. The FBI assigned the case to Special Agent Marcus Webb on October 19, 2023. He was 37 years old, 8 years with the Bureau, and he had worked 2 prior education fraud cases, both involving Title IV financial aid diversion at the college level. This was different. This was a high school principal using his position to funnel families into predatory private loans. He had not seen that before. He subpoenaed Pinnacle Education Partners' full business records on November 3rd. The records documented every loan referral Pinnacle had processed since 2016, organized by referring party. The referring party, coded as DRADME, accounted for 214 loan referrals over 6 years, more than any other single source in Pinnacle's portfolio. Agent Webb pulled Denton Ridge High School's staff directory. One administrator had been continuously employed at the school since 2011 with the authority and the community access to generate 214 referrals. He pulled Gerald Okafor's financial records on November 14. The P.O. box in Lawrenceville was in Gerald's name and registered to a variation of his full legal name, Gerald A. Okafor, rather than Gerald Akinwale Okafor, a small distinction that had been enough to avoid an obvious trail. The P.O. box had received 214 payments from Fluellen's personal checking account over 6 years. The amounts matched to the dollar. The referral fee schedule Agent Webb had recovered from Pinnacle's internal records. It took Agent Webb 11 days from the receipt of the subpoena to identify the scheme, map the financial transfers, and place Gerald Okafor at the center of it. He briefed his supervisor on November 25th. The only reason it had taken 6 years was that nobody had looked. Nobody had looked until someone picked up a prepaid phone at a Walgreens and stayed on the line for 6 minutes and 14 seconds. The arrest on February 4, 2024, at 8:14 in the morning, Gerald Okafor pulled his 2021 Honda Pilot into his reserved parking space at Denton Ridge High School. He was wearing the lanyard. He always wore the lanyard. He had a full day, a department head meeting at 8:30, a student disciplinary hearing at 10 o'clock, a classroom observation block from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, a meeting with a parent at 2:15 about a college application essay. He had been doing this for 23 years. He had not slept particularly well. He had not eaten anything unusual. He had no particular sense that this morning was different from any other. He walked through the front entrance, past the security desk, past the portrait the PTA had commissioned in 2020. He nodded to the school resource officer. He turned toward his office. Special Agent Marcus Webb was standing in the main hallway near the administrative suite, next to Gwinnett County Detective Patricia Hollis, next to a woman Gerald did not recognize who was holding a document. Gerald slowed. He did not stop immediately. His stride shortened. His eyes moved from Agent Webb to Detective Hollis to the woman with the document and back. He stopped. Dr. Okafor, don't go back to your office. I have a department meeting in 10 minutes. The meeting's been canceled. We need you to come with us right now. Gerald looked down the hallway. 3 teachers had appeared in doorways. The school resource officer had turned around. I don't know what you think is happening here, but I run this school. I have 600 students, depending on, and their parents signed for loans they didn't understand because you told them to trust you. Gerald Okafor stopped talking. He looked at Agent Webb for a long moment. His face did not collapse the way some faces do. It closed, instead, the way a door closes, not slammed, just pulled shut. You should know, he said, his voice dropping, "that I built this school. Whatever you think I did, you should know that I built this school." Agent Webb held the arrest warrant out. Gerald looked at it. He looked at the portrait of himself hanging on the wall 15 feet away. He looked at the trophy case behind the security desk. He looked at the bulletin board with the college acceptance letters from the class of 2024 pinned in neat rows. Then he turned around and put his hands behind his back. He was walked out through the side exit near the gymnasium, the same door students used when they arrived late and didn't want to pass the main office. The school resource officer held it open. Gerald Okafor walked through it into the February morning and did not look back. Behind him, in the main hallway, his staff stood in silence. The department meeting he had scheduled for 8:30 never happened. The classrooms filled without him. The school kept running because that is what schools do. They keep running even when the person who built them turns out to have been someone different. At 9:02 a.m., the superintendent of Gwinnett County Public Schools sent an all-staff email announcing that Dr. Okafor had been placed on administrative leave pending a personnel matter and that an interim principal would be on site by noon. The interim principal arrived at 11:47. She had no portrait on the wall. She had no reserved parking space. She had no lanyard. She had a full day ahead of her. The victims, 214 families. The average loan amount across all 214 was $14,500, with origination fees averaging 4.8% or $696 per loan paid up front out of the disbursement. Interest rates averaged 11.3% over terms ranging from 10 to 15 years. A financial economist hired by the prosecution later testified that the average Denton Ridge family who borrowed through Pinnacle's lending partners paid approximately $9,200 more over the life of their loan than they would have paid on a comparable federal loan, and approximately $6,100 more than they would have paid through the lowest rate private lenders available to borrowers with their credit profiles at the time of origination. Total excess cost to the 214 families, beyond what competitive market alternatives would have cost them, approximately $1.9 million. In addition to the excess cost, 31 families had borrowed through one of Pinnacle's lending partners that the prosecution's experts identified as having engaged in deceptive disclosure practices, understating the total repayment obligation in the initial loan summary documents. The FBI referred that finding to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which opened a separate investigation. Of the 214 families, federal investigators reached 189 for interviews. What they described was consistent across households, incomes, educational backgrounds, and the specific year they had attended Gerald Okafor's college planning conference. They trusted him. A woman named Teresa Bankole had attended with her son Kwame in 2019. Kwame had been accepted to Kennesaw State. Teresa was a postal worker, single mother, had not attended college herself. She described the meeting to Agent Webb. "He sat next to me and helped me go through the website. He said, 'This is what I'd do if it was my son.' I thought, this man has a doctorate. He runs this whole school. He's helped hundreds of families. If he's telling me this is the right loan, I believe him." Kwame Bankole graduated from Kennesaw State in 2023. He is currently paying $387 a month on a private loan that will cost him $46,200 in total repayment on a principal of $18,000. A man named Domingo Vasquez had attended in 2201 with his daughter Sophia, who was going to Georgia Perimeter. He had brought his wife, Rosa, who spoke limited English and relied on Domingo to translate. He described leaving the meeting feeling relieved. He said, "Dr. Okafor shook my hand at the end. He said, 'You're doing the right thing for your daughter.' I drove home feeling like we figured it out." Sophia Vasquez is currently paying $298 a month on a loan she will be paying until she is 38 years old. A woman named Cynthia Marsh attended in 2022 with her twin sons. Both headed to different colleges in the same fall. Gerald had helped her apply for 2 separate loans in the same meeting. She signed both in his office. Cynthia Marsh is currently paying $641 a month combined across both loans. She told investigators simply, "I thought he was helping us." He was, just not the way she thought. Investigation, indictment, and trial. Terrence Fluellen was arrested on February 4, 2024, the same morning as Gerald Okafor, at his office in Buckhead. He hired a federal defense attorney by noon. He was meeting with prosecutors by the following Tuesday. He gave them everything: the full referral record, the payment history, text messages, voicemails, a handwritten note Gerald had left in the P.O. box in 2021, asking Fluellen to hold a payment until after the new year for tax purposes. In exchange, Fluellen received a cooperation agreement and a significantly reduced exposure. He was charged with 1 count of conspiracy and 2 counts of wire fraud. He is scheduled to be sentenced in 2025. On March 8, 2024, a federal grand jury in the Northern District of Georgia returned a 44-count indictment against Gerald Okafor. The charges: 22 counts of honest services wire fraud under 18 U.S.C. sections 1343 and 1346, 14 counts of accepting unlawful compensation as a public employee under Georgia Code 451043, 6 counts of wire fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1343, and 2 counts of making false statements to federal investigators. Honest services wire fraud is a federal statute designed specifically for situations like this one, where a person in a position of trust deprives the people depending on them of their right to honest, unconflicted service. It does not require the victims to have lost money in a conventional sense. It requires only that the trusted person concealed a conflict of interest that would have mattered to the people relying on them. Every parent who had sat across from Gerald Okafor in a college planning conference had been deprived of their right to know that the man helping them choose a loan was being paid to recommend it. The trial began on October 7, 2024, in the Richard B. Russell Federal Building in Atlanta. Judge Denise Kimathi presiding. AUSA Franklin Osei for the prosecution. Defense attorney Janet Cruz for the defense. Cruz argued that Gerald had genuinely believed the loans he recommended were suitable for the families he served, that his referral arrangement with Fluellen had not compromised his judgment, and that the families who borrowed through Pinnacle's partners had ultimately received loans and sent their children to college, the outcome they were seeking. A USAOSA dismantled this in his opening with a single question, posed to the jury rhetorically. If Dr. Okafor believed these loans were the best option for these families, why did he hide the payment he received for recommending them? He never disclosed it to a single family. Not one. In 6 years and 214 meetings, he never once said, "I receive a referral fee from this lender." Not once. He looked at the jury. The question is not whether these families got a loan. The question is whether they got the truth. They did not. The trial ran 9 days. 28 witnesses. The most affecting testimony came from parents, not financial experts. Teresa Bankel took the stand on the 4th day. She is a postal worker. She has worked the same route in Duluth for 16 years. She wore her postal service badge to court that day, still clipped to her jacket from her morning shift. She had come directly from work. She described the meeting in 2019. She described trusting Gerald because he had helped so many families, because he had a doctorate and she did not, because when he sat next to her and guided her through the application, she had felt, for the first time in the entire college process, like someone was genuinely on her side. She paused, her jaw tightened. He knew I didn't know what I was looking at. He knew my son was the first in our family to go to college. He sat next to me and he used all of that. She looked at Gerald Okafor. I would have done anything for my son to have a better life than I had. He knew that, and he used it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 53 minutes. Guilty on all 44 counts. Sentencing. Sentencing was held on January 17th. 2025. The gallery was full. Former students, parents, teachers, and community members who had known Gerald Okafor for over 2 decades. Several people who had worked for him at Denton Ridge were present. Several people whose children he had helped send to college before the scheme began and who had no part in the fraud were present. His father, Emmanuel Okafor, now 81 years old, was seated in the second row. 31 victim impact statements had been submitted. Judge Kimathi had read each one. She addressed Gerald Okafor for 13 minutes. Her remarks did not raise her voice. They did not need to. 3 passages were quoted across every news report, every legal analysis, and every education policy discussion that followed. The first, you built something real at that school. The graduation rates, the college enrollment numbers, the financial literacy programs, those are real. Those families are real. Those children went to college. You did that. And I want the record to reflect that I understand it, because it makes what you did worse, not better. You knew the value of trust in that building. You had earned it, and you leveraged it. The second, 214 families sat across a desk from you because you had spent years making yourself the person they would sit across a desk from. You were not a stranger who tricked them at a table. You were the most trusted person in their child's life. You used that trust as a financial instrument. You priced it at $800 alone. The third, after a pause, your father is in this room, Dr. Okafor. I want you to think about what he drove a taxi 6 days a week for. I want you to think about the desk he built from a door and 2 sawhorses. I want you to think about what he was trying to make possible. And then I want you to think about what you did with it, because you had more than most people who sit in that chair ever had. And you chose this anyway. Emmanuel Okafor, in the second row, did not move during those words. He looked at the floor. The sentence, 121 months in federal prison, 10 years and 1 month, $1.1 million in restitution to the federal government, representing the referral fees received. A separate civil consent order required Pinnacle Education Partners Lending Network to provide remediation to all 214 affected families, including principal reductions and rate modifications totaling approximately $1.9 million, subject to individual borrower elections. Lifetime revocation of Gerald Okafor's Georgia educator's license. Lifetime prohibition from employment in any school, educational institution, or government-funded program. Gerald Okafor was remanded immediately. He was transferred to FCI Jessup, a low-security federal facility in Jessup, Georgia, in March 2025. His projected release date is listed as January 2034. He will be 61 years old. Candace Okafor, his wife, filed for legal separation in March 2000. She remains in the Suwannee house with their daughter. She has not commented publicly. Emmanuel Okafor, 81 years old, a man who drove a taxi 6 days a week in a country that would not recognize his engineering degree, so that his son could sit at a door and sawhorse's desk and become something, left the federal courthouse on January 17, 2025, without speaking to anyone. His younger son, Emeka, was with him. They walked to the parking garage together in silence. AFTEMAS, the Georgia Professional Standards Commission launched a statewide audit of school administrator financial relationships with educational vendors in March 2025. The audit identified 2 additional cases of undisclosed referral arrangements, neither as extensive as Okafor's, at schools in Fulton and Cobb counties. Both cases resulted in license revocations and civil consent orders. The Georgia General Assembly passed the School Administrator Financial Integrity Act in April 2000. The legislation requires all school administrators to file annual financial disclosure forms listing any compensated relationship with educational vendors, mandates annual ethics training specific to financial conflicts of interest, and creates a secure, anonymous reporting system for school staff to flag potential violations, funded, built, and staffed within 6 months of passage. The anonymous reporting system went live on July 1, 2025. It was named in the legislation's findings section, which cited the case of Denton Ridge High School as evidence of what a single anonymous call could accomplish. Sylvia Tran, the Professional Standards Commission investigator who had received the tip on October 12, 2023, and had run Pinnacle Education Partners through a business registry before calling the FBI, was recognized by the commission at its annual ethics awards ceremony in September 2025. She deflected most of the credit in her acceptance remarks. She said, "I ran a name through a database. The person who made the call did the hard part. The person who made the call has never been identified. The prepaid phone was purchased with cash. The call originated from a cell tower near Denton Ridge High School. Beyond that, investigators have nothing. Whoever it was, they worked at that school. They saw something. They bought a phone at a Walgreens and stayed on the line for 6 minutes and 14 seconds and then hung up and went back to their day. They have not come forward. They may never come forward, but 214 families are receiving loan remediation. A statewide audit found 2 more cases. An anonymous reporting system is now live across every school in Georgia. A bill passed the legislature, all of it from 6 minutes and 14 seconds, and someone who didn't give their name. Gerald Okafor is currently incarcerated at FCI Jessup, Georgia. He will be eligible for release in 2034. He will be 61 years old. He will owe $1.1 million he cannot pay. He will carry a revoked educator's license for the rest of his life. He built something real at Denton Ridge. The graduation rates are real. The college enrollment is real. The families who sat in his office before 2018 and got honest advice are real. So are 214 families paying loans they didn't have to take. He knew how trust worked. He had spent 23 years earning it. Then he charged $800 for it. And somebody who worked in that building knew and picked up a phone. And that was enough.